Sorry, guys, I get cut off after 5 minutes, and of course, that's not enough time for me to talk. So, as I was saying on the last slide, and I brought it right back up to where we were, at this point, during the Korean War, the United Nations pushed the troops pretty successfully, North Korean troops, all the way up to the border with China. And at that point, we had a decision to make what was going to happen. I put these two last parts on here. That was the main decision. General MacArthur wanted to go in, and he wanted to attack China. He wanted to get rid of the communism there, but he knew that that would increase a risk against the Soviet Union too, but he really didn't care. President Truman, however, was the one that was like, nope, we're not starting another war, so I don't think that's going to happen. You guys can see this a little bit better on my map. You guys can see I've obviously drawn in here a couple of places. So Pusan right here in this area, this is where the UN troops first landed, and as well as Inshan over here, I have an arrow there. Those two places were where our troops landed after the North Koreans successfully had come into parts of South Korea. We pushed the South Koreans all the way up to this river, the Yalu River, which is on the border between North Korea and China, and that's where the decisions were of what was going to happen. Should we push them into communist China and then start another war with the Soviets or not? President Truman was the one that ultimately got the decision, and he said, no, it's not going to happen. So in the end, the craziest thing about the Korean War is that really things didn't change too much from 1950 when the war started till 1953 when the war ended. If you guys know today, Korea is still two territories. There's North Korea and there's South Korea. So it really didn't make a difference. And you guys can see on the map, the area I have with blue squiggly lines, that is the territory that was basically gained after the war. The dotted line, the blue dotted line I have before, right above Seoul, that was the 38th parallel. That was the dividing line previous, and now we gained a little bit more territory afterwards, but really it's still, you know, two divided countries. But General MacArthur definitely was in some trouble for what happened. MacArthur decided to send this letter to the House Majority Leader at the time, Joseph Martin, basically criticizing the fact that Truman was almost, in his mind, too scared to go and attack the Soviets and the Chinese, and that didn't go over well because Martin made the letter public, so everybody knew what General MacArthur's views were on President Truman, and that's kind of, you know, going over your boss's head and, you know, saying you don't like him. So Truman fired MacArthur for insubordination. There was a treaty that ended the war. Things, you know, got resolved in the end, so it turned out okay. At this time in the 1950s, there was a lot of crazy things going on too, and this is the time when this guy, Senator Joseph McCarthy, came out. He was a senator from Wisconsin that basically started to accuse people of communism in the United States, and this is also when the play The Crucible was written about the Salem witchcraft trials, because there's a lot of parallels here in the fact that people felt like, just like how in the 1700s when people were accusing people of witchcraft, they thought people were just being accused of communism. And if you were accused, you were automatically guilty. It wasn't like you were given fair trial, you could say, almost in this. So in this case, Senator Joseph McCarthy started to accuse people of communism, and people got angry back at him. It basically went to television because people were like, okay, what's your proof? And he really didn't have any. So this list of 250 communists he had, really, there was not a whole lot on it, and he kind of became almost like an embarrassment to some of the senators for what he did. Okay. The next president that came in after Truman was President Eisenhower, war hero from World War II. We talked about him before. He came in right in the end of 1953. He wanted this Korean War to end. Stalin had died at that point, the leader of the Soviet Union, and so he came up with this idea that we are going to just let things settle from what happened and no more war. He also created something called domino theory. Just like a set of dominoes, he said if one country falls to communism, other countries all surrounding it are subject to fall too. So just like one domino falls over, all the other ones are. And so he said, you know, our biggest idea right here was to protect those nations that weren't communist from becoming communist. This communist idea started to go to other areas too. You guys can see here, it started in the Middle East here, where we started to say that we'll send our goods or our military to the Middle East, and as well as in Latin America. You have communist leader Fidel Castro here, who took over in Cuba, making that territory communist as well. And lastly, you have the arms race. This is a struggle against weapons superiority and brinkmanship, the policy of risking war. And this is also, lastly, I'll try and go